Welcome to episode 5 of the Noble Character Crafts podcast. My name is Amy, and this is a podcast all about my life as a knitter, a crocheter, and a hand dyer of yarn. You can find me online on Instagram and Etsy at Noble Character Crafts, on Ravelry at Noble Character, and I also have a group for this podcast on Ravelry under Noble Character Crafts podcast. In that group, you can find all of the show notes for this episode and previous episodes, as well as any chatter threads. So I would love for you to join me there for any chatter, or if you would like to join in on the cow that I am co-hosting right now with Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady podcast. We are hosting a cable cow that started on November 1st and is running through February 1st for any projects that that include cables. So that can be any whips that you have going on as well, as long as they were less than 50% completed when the cow started, and any other cable projects that you might want to start. You can certainly join in on, you can certainly enter your projects into our threads. There are chatter and finished object threads on both my Ravelry group and Kay's Crazy Sock Lady podcast group. So please join both of those. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to see all of the different projects that are going on in those threads. So I do hope that you can join us. I already do have a few prizes for that cow that I have collected. And if there are any other makers out there that would like to donate any prizes for that cow, I would so appreciate that. So please get in contact with me through Ravelry, through Instagram, or I do have an email as well, which is noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com. So you can certainly contact me in that way as well. So today is Thursday, February 16th, 2017. I am coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live on a farm with my husband and our 5 children. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are a new viewer, thank you so much for checking me out. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I truly appreciate it. So today I am just drinking a cup of my favorite tea, which is Nighty Night tea, which I know it's not night, but I love it, so I drink it all the time. And it is in a very old mug, a Mary Engelbright mug, which is kind of cheeky. Lives, get one. And then in that basket, it's probably too small to see, but there's like different occupations and, well, even like father and mother, teacher, artist. So there's like different, you know, things that you can do with your life. So anyway, it's cute. I love Mary Engelbright. I really loved her when I was in high school. I collected so many Mary Engelbright things, and this is one of the few things that has lasted through the years. I have also a bag that, you know, I don't know where it's at right now. I always am carrying yarn in it, some project usually, and it is so old that the handle is like threadbare, and I've tried to fix it. I need to actually just replace the entire handle. I've tried to like stitch it up to keep it from unraveling, but even my patchwork has become unraveled now, so it needs new handles. All right. So my first finished object that I have, well, actually my only finished object, but it's big. I finished my southbound train shawl. And I was only on this section right here last time I podcast. So I was very, very monogamous with this project. This is a test knit that I was doing for Amber of the Maker's Haven podcast, which if you haven't checked her podcast out, you should, because her podcast is so wonderful, as well as Kay's Crazy Sock Lady podcast. Both of those ladies are just some of my favorite ladies that podcast. So anyway, Amber, this is just being test knit right now by a few ladies for Amber. This is, again, the Southbound train shawl, and it is made using one large skein, one full skein, but actually it only used a little over half of my full skein. I think it used 51 grams of the main skein, which was this color, the light color, which I used my Sweetness colorway. I used all of my own hand-dyed yarns for this project. So the main color, I used the Sweetness colorway, and this is all on my Pitter Patter base, which is fingering weight 75-25 blend. 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. So anyway, you start at the bottom and work your way up, and along with the main skein, then you use 5 mini skeins. So I have my basket of scrap yarn next to me, and it's not well organized, sorry. But anyway, the first color I used at the bottom there is my Life-Giving colorway. Then for the next color, I used this black, which is just a solid black called Night. Then the third color is this, which isn't showing completely. It really matches this shirt very well, actually. It's pretty close. And this is my Vineyard colorway, which is my newest colorway. Then the third color is my Enriched colorway. Ooh, there it is. And the last color is my Cold Water colorway, the blue. And then I just put another stripe of the Life-Giving colorway up here at the top again. There are 3 patterned sections that repeat throughout. So as you can see, there is, well, let me show you on this Vineyard colorway because it's a little bit easier to see. So the first section has, oh, sorry. Okay, this first section is this eyelet section right there. And then the next section is this dropped stitch section where you incorporate the next color. And the third section is, I don't know what this is called. I should probably have asked Amber, but this section is just a nice textured section that is it's my favorite section. I love the look of that pattern. So anyway, then there's 5 sections. There's 5 sections with 3 sections in each section. Are you lost? But it's really a super easy pattern. I don't want this to sound confusing because it's really not. But the first section has 3 parts, I guess I should say. So this is the first part, second part, third part. Then the second section starts here with this black stripes, and 1, 2, 3 parts. And then the third section is the Vineyard colorway, and then you incorporate the Enriched colorway, 1, 2, 3. And as you work up, each part gets a little bit smaller. So like the green and the black, you did 3 stripes of the eyelet and the drop stitch section. But then when you get up to the burgundy, you only do 2 stripes of each. And so it keeps getting less and less as you go, so that you know, you don't run out of your minis. So anyway, I just love it so much. I am so happy with it. And I think it'll go with quite a bit of my wardrobe with all the different colors that are in it. So I'm super happy with it. I used a US 4 needle, which I don't remember what the millimeter is on that, but anyway. So I'm so happy with it. And I made a shawl in like a week. That's pretty cool. I would have never guessed that I would have been able to do it. But since the pattern changes so much and the colors are always changing, it's just so much fun to do. It really is. I never lost interest in it. It was so much fun. It went so quickly and I couldn't put it down. So I love it. And Amber is hoping to come out with the pattern mid-December, I believe. So keep an eye out on her Instagram page for more details on that. So since I was so monogamous on this project this week, I feel like I haven't gotten a lot of other progress made on any of my other works in progress, but I will show you what I have done, the little that I have done. So my contribution for the cable cowl is in this bag. This bag is by My Creative Frenzy. And I am making the cloche, which is in the Nora Gone Knitted Source book that I have, and then that is also one of the prizes for the cowl that I have. I have an extra copy of that book. So I am just working. You start with this cable panel. So I was right here where this shell, pretty shell stitch marker or progress keeper is showing you. So I had worked one repeat of the cable pattern, and now I have worked one more. Right now it's measuring a little over 11 inches, and the pattern says I need to continue working this cable pattern until it's 22 inches. So I'm halfway there. And then you pick up stitches along the top and along the bottom to do both the crown of the hat and the brim, or the ribbing along the edge. So I am substituting the cable pattern from the original one that is in the book. I am using the Rib Fantasy cable pattern. So I love it so much. I am using my own hand-dyed yarn again. This is, again, the Life Giving colorway. This is on my Lenora base, which is 100% superwash merino worsted weight. So even the back side of this is beautiful, I think. You wouldn't think that the wrong side would be pretty, but the wrong side is very pretty. It's just like more subtle, I guess. It's not quite as defined as the front side. So anyway, I'm so happy with this, and I can't wait to have it for winter. And I'm hoping to make a pair of mittens too, to match, so that I have a set, but one thing at a time. So, I'm using ChowGoo needles. All of my needles are ChowGoo. That's all I use. And this is on size 8, 5mm needles. So I'm hoping to get a lot of work done on that this week. Oh, I forgot to mention that I do have one other finished object, but I can't show it to you yet. It is a gift that I mailed off to someone, and I just wanted to wait until they received it to show you. But I did record a little section yesterday before I mailed it, and so I'll insert that probably next time I podcast so that you can see that finished object as well. And I'm really excited about it. So anyway, it was a fun project. Okay, my next whip is in another My Creative Frenzy project bag with Little Red Riding Hood on it. And oh, this one's hardly even worth showing because I've gotten so little done on it. Actually, both of these I have two sock works in progress, and both of them have been sorely neglected this week. But anyway, I am making, this will also be for the cable cowl. I am making a pair of cabled socks, and I'm all tangled. I'll figure that out later. Anyway, again, I haven't worked hardly anything. There's the progress keeper from last time, so what, I've worked like maybe 10 rows. But I finished the ribbing and have just started the cable pattern. I'm making up my own cable pattern for this for the first time. So I'm really excited for this to see if it works. And I've only done one twisted stitch there. You can hardly see it. Anyway, hopefully we'll get a lot more work done on this too. I am using, again, my own hand-dyed yarn, and it's on the Cold Water colorway. Again, on my Pitter Patter base, the 7525. But I'm hoping that this, you know, solid color will really show off the cables well. Okay, and then my next whip, you'll see a pattern here with my project bags, is another My Creative Frenzy project bag. They're just my favorite. And this one, again, has been quite neglected. This is my love sock, my second. The first one is already done. And yeah, pretty sad. There's my progress keeper. Maybe a few more than 10 rows, but 15 maybe. And it's just a vanilla sock. So that's pretty sad. I did mention last time I podcasted though that I was discouraged with this project and was thinking about frogging it, but I have decided just to keep going with it. And if they're not a perfect match, because my gauge is a little bit different than my first sock, but I can't bear to rip it all out, and I think it'll be fine. When I was editing the podcast last week, when I was showing it on screen, I didn't think it looked quite as bad as I thought it did, so I'm just going to keep on going. I am doing an afterthought heel for this, which I'm already past that part, so I'm using, again, my own hand-dyed yarn on my pitter-patter base again. The purple is my Dignity colorway, and then the speckled variegated color is my Love colorway, which is one of my very favorites. And I love how that's knitting up. This is the first thing I've made with this colorway, so it's fun to see it knit up. I did a 1x1 rib with only 15 rows, I think, or 16. Well, anyway, 15 or 16 rows. This is slow going. I cast these on, I think, in September. So it's pretty bad that these are taking so long, but I really don't think that vanilla socks are my favorite. I get too bored with it. The pattern socks that I've made just go so much faster because, like I've mentioned before, the pattern just really helps me to keep working on it. So, okay, a new whip that I have started is a scrappy blanket. And I have wanted to do this for a long time, this particular pattern. I have started the Excavation Afghan, which is a free pattern on Ravelry using scraps. And this is just the start of it, of course. So this, this blanket works from the corner, obviously, and you just increase as you go, and you leave a tail on both the beginning and the end. Well, at the beginning of the row, then you turn your work, and when you come back, so you make 2 rows with each color. When you come back, then you leave another tail and you cut it off, and this becomes the fringe of the blanket. So you don't have to weave any ends in, which is a huge bonus. And it only takes a very little bit of yarn, especially at the beginning here. But even when you're to the middle of the blanket, it doesn't take a ton of yarn to get across the row and back again. So I am super excited to use up scraps for this. I've tried to, when I finish a project, put the colors that I've used for that project in, not exclusively, not only those colors, but like I have my starting point colors from my starting point shawl in here, and I have a couple of pairs of socks that I've made that are in there. And right now I'm working through the colors that I used for the southbound train shawl, putting them in here as well. So anyway, I'm really excited to have a scrappy project on the go. And I think I'll really enjoy working on this more and more. So this will be obviously a long-term project, so I will continue to show you that as it grows. And I'm just keeping this in this basket that I have next to me with all of my scraps. Many of these are experiments with dyeing. I'll show you a few things that I've just put in to like exhaust some of the dye, and things that I've tried and I'm not happy with, but they're just not quite the color that I wanted. I was kind of going for, these are all along the same color palette really. But here's just a few of the samples I have in there. Oh, here's another one. I really like this one a lot. It's like a periwinkle. I haven't reproduced it again anyway. Okay, let's see. Oh, I have one more whip. This one was a finished object, excuse me, that I showed in my first podcast, but I have pulled it back out to finish it up a little bit more nicely. So this is my Wyatt sweater that I made for my second youngest son. He's 5. And I should button this up so it looks nicer. And when I made it, and this pattern is by Michelle Wong. If I can button it correctly. I missed a button. Okay. When I made it, I Norwegian purl sometimes, and then sometimes I don't. When I do Norwegian purling, I'm much looser in my gauge. And when I made this, at this point right here, you can see this line. That's when you split and start working. You stop working in the round and you start working just the front piece. I think. Well, anyway, you start purling instead of just knitting in the round. And so I was Norwegian purling right there, and my gauge is a little bit too loose. And so to fix that problem, I am doing a duplicate stitch over the top of it with this burgundy colorway, which I am using Knit Picks Wool of the Andes in the current colorway for that. The body of the sweater is in the Grizzly Heather colorway. So anyway, I haven't done this before, but it's really super easy. I just found just a picture tutorial on Pinterest for duplicate. Well, actually, I didn't know what it was called, and so I went on Pinterest to see if I could find something, and then I found a picture tutorial that showed you how to do it. So basically, if I can show you, basically you start at the bottom of the stitch that you want to go over. So see, you can see I've come up through that stitch and I want to go over here. And then the next thing you'll do is go, sorry, I'm looking at this backwards, but you go from this side. Ooh, I'm not gonna be able to do this very well. Let me put it in and then show you what I did. Here. You go from that side over above the stitch that you want to go over. Does that make sense? So I want to go over this one, and you start at the bottom of it, and then you put your needle up through the 2 legs of the stitch above it and pull it through. Not too tight, I don't think you want to do it too tight. And then you go back down to where you started, and that does the duplicate stitch. So anyway, I think that'll look a lot nicer and finish that off a little bit better so that it doesn't look so strange with that line right there. It'll look more purposeful. So hopefully it'll look okay. I'll show you when I finish it and see if I'm happy with the end result. So those are all of the works in progress that I have given any time to since the last time I podcast. I have a few other works in progress that I haven't touched, but anyway, that's what I have been working on since last time. So I wanted to do something different this time. I have been watching a few podcasts that, so many of the knitting podcasts also have a segment of sewing. And I have seen on a few podcasts, both Fluffy Fibers and Stitched in Sweden have done a seamstress tag, because both of those ladies sew beautifully. And then people have tagged them for what they call a seamstress tag, where they go through a few questions, and if they get tagged, then they answer the questions, and then they tag a few other sewists that they know that they would like to, hear from. So I am not a sewist. I know how to sew. My mom taught me how to sew, and she's a beautiful sewist, but I cannot claim to be a sewist. I don't love it. I wish I sewed. I wish I loved it, but I just don't love it. So I appreciate it highly. I really, really appreciate sewist work. So I have just come to the conclusion that I am not a sewist, and at this point in my life, maybe at some point I will really have a passion for it and get more into it, but right now my passion is knitting, so that's what I do, that's what I love. But I thought it would be fun, because I know that there are so many other podcasters out there that don't sew as well, even though there are many that do, but I thought it would be fun to start a knitter's tag. So obviously I listened to the questions that the seamstress tag has, and I used some of those same questions but used them for knitting, and then I added, I was doing some researching for any other knitting questions out there, and so I included a few other ones that I found as well that I thought were fun. So I'll go through the questions and answer them for myself, and then I'll tag a few ladies as well. So the first question is, when did you learn to knit and who taught you? Well, I also want to include crochet in this because my fiber story starts with crochet. So my grandmother crocheted all the time when I mean, she was always crocheting, but she did not actually teach me how to crochet. I didn't learn how to crochet until I was a junior in college. And one of the gals that was in the dorm with me, she just lived a couple of rooms away from me, she crocheted and she taught me to crochet. And so that was my junior year in college, and I was I didn't have the time to devote to it as much as I did as I got older, but I never put it down ever since I learned. I've always kept it up and enjoyed working on different projects. I've always had a project on the go ever since I learned. I am able to spend a lot more time doing my craft than I did at that point in my life, probably, because I'm not in school anymore. So anyway, it's more of a lifestyle for me now than it was then. But so that was back in 99 or 2000 when I learned. And then I just learned how to knit in January of this year. And I learned from a YouTube video from an Instagram friend of mine, Peony in Time, Anya. She made a how to knit video series. And when I saw her post about that in January, I think it was, probably December or January, I was like, this is it. I am going to try this. I have admired knitting for so long, and there have been so many projects that I have really loved and I just couldn't do because all I knew how to do was crochet. And though there are so many beautiful crochet patterns out there, there's just, something special about knitting that I really admired, and I was always afraid of learning how to, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to learn how to knit very easily, and I just kept putting it off, really tackling how to do it. But finally in January, I watched Anya's videos and practiced and practiced and practiced and ripped out and tried again. I learned on some super bulky yarn and some super big needles. I think they were like size 15 or something like that. And I think that was really good to learn on bulkier weight because you could really see your stitches. I would recommend that for a beginner anyway. And of course, then whatever you're making works up very quickly too. So that's, encouraging. So Anya is who taught me how to knit from Peony in Time. I hear so many people, quite a few people say that they taught themselves how to knit by watching YouTube videos. And maybe I'm being a little too picky, but I don't think that's true. You didn't teach yourself, you learned from a YouTuber. So I just want to give credit where credit's due because Anya is the one that put out those videos that I watched. And then of course, along the way then, Anya taught the throwing style, and I knit continentally because I have that crochet background. I think that really helps because I'm used to holding my yarn in my left hand. So once I got the basics of the stitches of how to knit and how to purl and everything down, then I looked up more YouTube videos, and I'm sorry, I can't recall which videos I watched to learn how to do the continental style. I think I watched several. But anyway, I was able to pick up the continental style better watching some other videos, and that is what works for me. So anyway, I have just completely fallen in love with knitting ever since I learned. And my crocheting is really something, I don't work on it nearly as much as I do my knitting. I just love knitting. So, okay, number 2, what is your favorite or proudest make? And I think that mine has to be my Starting Point shawl by Joji Locatelli. And I've shown this before, but I did the mystery cowl. I think it started back in May. And the reason why this is my proudest make is because it was the first thing that I did using all of my own hand-dyed yarn. So that's what made this project really special. It's so much fun to have a vision of the colors that you want for a project and then come up with the colors and use them and see it come together. It's such a fun process. So I think this is probably my proudest knit so far. Okay, question number 3 is, what is your most disastrous make? And this one's not too terrible. Well, actually, probably my most disastrous make was my first piece, but I just kept ripping it out and I never kept it. I just was making like a shawl or a scarf basically that was about this wide, and I was just making I just kept going. I never finished the shawl. I was just stitching along, and then I'd rip it out, and I'd stitch along and I'd rip it out. And then I eventually ripped it out and used it for a different shawl. But anyway, my most disastrous make, I would say, is this cardigan that I made this summer. Oh, I forgot to grab the yarn, but I believe I used knit picks, and it was a cotton blend. I did this for the summer garment cowl that Joanna of the Stitching the High Notes podcast hosted this summer. So I wanted to use cotton so that it would be a summer garment, but I just don't think that it is the best choice of yarn for this garment. The fit is just not great. It fits me, but it just doesn't lay very nicely. As you can see, the button band just kind of doesn't have enough structure to it. This is the Just for Mom cardigan. That's the pattern. And see, like, it's hard to keep it buttoned. I just haven't worn it yet, and I don't think that I will. I just don't like it. I don't feel pretty in it. I feel frumpy in it. So I probably will, I mean, if I want to use the yarn for something else, I'll probably frog it, but I don't know. It's just folded and kept in my closet for now. So I guess that's my most disastrous make because I'm just not going to be using it, sadly. I thought about putting in like a ribbon along the button band, but still I just don't love how it lays on me. So I might be able to fix that problem, but I don't know that I really want to put that much time into it for something that I'm really not going to be happy with anyway. So that was my first and only garment that I've ever knitted for myself. Actually, yeah. And so I'm hopeful that the next thing that I make turns out a little bit better and I can actually get a lot of use out of. Hopefully, I'm a little, anxious to try to make another garment, afraid that, I'll put all that time into it and it won't be wearable again, but I will try. I will try again. Okay, question number 4. What is your most dreaded knitting task? And I would say mine is just the fear of making a mistake is probably, and then having to rip back. I hate picking up stitches after I frogged back. That is really, really stressful for me, especially doing any kind of lace work, of course. So that is probably my most dreaded knitting task, is picking up stitches after I have to frog back because I lose them and it's just no fun. It's no fun. And then a couple of times I've ripped back and then I haven't gone back far enough. And after I've ripped back, then I notice, oh, you didn't go back far enough. You still have that mistake there. So anyway, that whole process is just stressful. What is your favorite knitting task? So my favorite knitting task is actually just knitting, obviously. Is that obvious? I think so. Especially once you get the hang of a pattern, and you don't have to be glued to the written pattern so much. You know, it's like with this southbound train shawl, you got to the point where I didn't even need the pattern for anything. I just knew what was coming next, and I mean, of course, I kept looking at it to make sure I was doing the correct number of repeats and everything, but I was definitely not glued to the pattern, and it was just enjoyable, just relaxing and de-stressing, and so much fun to see all the colors come together. I love seeing a project come together and just doing the relaxing part of it. Okay, number 6. What is your most used knit? This is a hard question for me, again, because I haven't been knitting for very long yet, so I don't have a ton of things. And also, you know, it just really started getting cold within the last couple of months here. So I've just started wearing my knits more recently. But I think that my most used knits are my hand knit socks. Not one particular pair, but just in general, my socks. So I pretty much have been wearing them every day for the last month or two. And I only have 5 pairs right now, but I use them all the time. And then also, I've gotten a lot of use out of my starting point shawl, and also my, I just recently made my Elena half hat, but I know that I'm going to be getting more and more use out of that, as well as this one, you know, so anyway, but again, my socks are probably my most used knit. Number 7, what is your favorite gift you've knitted for someone else? And I'm not going to do a knitted project, I'm going to do a crocheted project, which I think it's interchangeable anyway, right? So I would say that my favorite gift that I've ever given is my very first crochet project was an afghan that I made for my mom. And again, that was when I was in college. It was my junior year. And I made her a striped afghan with a simple double crochet stitch, just stripes, just back and forth, a rectangle, you know, super easy. And I used a navy blue flecked yarn as well as a white yarn. So it had kind of a nautical look to it with the navy blue and the white stripes. And my mom actually keeps that on my parents' houseboat. So that's fitting. And I actually haven't seen it in a long time. I was talking to my mom a while ago and I said, I really want to see that because it would be fun to look at it and see, you know, how well did I make that? How many mistakes are in it, you know? But since it's on her houseboat, and when I have visited her houseboat in recent years, which actually I haven't been to their houseboat in a few years, but anyway, you know, we go in the summertime and it's not cool and we don't need a blanket. So anyway, I haven't seen it. It's been packed away in their boat for a while. So she said that they use it, but I haven't seen it in a while. Anyway, I would say that's my favorite, or because it was my first project and it was for my mom and I love her so much. So anything that is for her is special to me. Number 8, what is your ultimate knitting goal? I think my ultimate knitting goal would be to have more of a wardrobe of knits for both myself and my children. So I would really like to have knitted socks for all of my family to wear, and sweaters as well for each of my children and for myself and my husband. I think that would be fun, so that we could all have knitted objects to wear every day if possible, if we wanted to. Number 9, have you taught anyone else to knit? Kind of. I've taught my daughter, who is 6, how to knit, but she's not independent yet. She still needs my help quite a bit. And she doesn't practice faithfully every day by any means. It's maybe once a week she picks it up and says, Mom, let's knit for a little bit. And of course, it's labor intensive for me and her, you know, just because she can do it, but she makes a lot of mistakes, and so I have to step in and help her out quite a bit. So, but it's fun to see her picking it up and working on it. She's working on a shawl using chunky yarn and huge needles like I did. So I hope that that is, you know, it worked for me, so I'm hoping it will work for her too. And she seems to enjoy it, but it's certainly not her favorite pastime. That's okay. Number 10, what is your favorite knitting entertainment? So what do you do while you're knitting? What do you get entertained with while you're knitting? And mine is definitely other podcasts. I have just loved watching podcasts so much, which is one of the many reasons why I am doing this podcast, because I enjoy it so much and I wanted to be part of this community in that way. So I remember my very first podcast I ever watched was the Jinx Yarn podcast, the Dyer's Notebook by Laura of Jinx Yarns. And I discovered her because I was interested in dyeing yarn, and she has a lot of dyeing tutorials. And so I came across her YouTube channel because of her tutorials, and then stumbled across one of her podcasts, and I was like, what is this? She's showing her knitting? Huh? What? I just didn't get it. I didn't know there was anything. I never heard of it before. And so anyway, that was the first one that I discovered. And then she talked about Kristen of the Yarngasm podcast, and so I started watching her. And so that's, basically how it works. You watch one podcast and they recommend another podcast, and then so many times when I am watching a podcast, if I hear about a new one, I'll pause what I'm watching, search for the new one I just heard about, and save it so that I can go watch them when I'm finished watching the first one. It's just like a never-ending chain of new podcasts to watch. So it's super fun. I love discovering new podcasters that just, when you watch some podcasters, it's just like an immediate connection that you're just like, oh, I can just tell that I'm going to really enjoy watching this podcast. And I think that's so much fun. So that is definitely the thing that I am entertained with the most while I'm knitting. I also do listen to a few audiobooks and music sometimes. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm just not interested in it. I just would so much rather watch podcasts. So anyway, number 11. Do you have any other hobbies? I do. So obviously I crochet, like I mentioned. And then, well, if you watch the first podcast, I have started weaving, but I haven't put a lot of time into that. So I'm definitely not a weaver yet. I can't claim to be, but I have started that. You can see my guitar right back here. And so I do play that. I don't play it super well, but I do play it, and I've played it for a few years. And I sing as well. I really enjoy singing. I sing with my church sometimes. And I have played my guitar for our women's Bible studies a couple of times. But I mainly just use it for our family, just to play songs for the kids and stuff. And then I also love to bake. I bake homemade bread quite often, and I love to bake cookies and cakes and yummy things like that. I don't do it nearly as often as I would like to, because then, of course, if I have it, I eat it. But I really do enjoy baking. There are a few things that I am now like the sole person that can make them for our family, which is kind of fun. For example, Texas sheet cake. My family really likes Texas sheet cake, which is just a chocolate flat cake. And for some reason, my mom has a really hard time making it. She is an awesome baker, but I don't know why. This particular recipe just gives her trouble. And so I am just, whenever she comes to visit, I make it. And for Thanksgiving, I'm making it. She's making all the other desserts, but I'm making Texas sheet cake. So that's kind of fun that there's a few things like that that I can do. I really enjoy it. So, okay, number 12. Do you have any other knitting techniques you want to learn or master? So there are, obviously, again, I'm a new knitter, so there are a few that I have never tried yet. For example, color work and brioche are a few of the things that I really am interested in picking up very soon. I'm actually hoping to try to make some color work mittens for a Christmas present. So I'm not sure if that's the best project to have be my first color work, but I'm going to try it and we'll see. I figured they're small, and I'm planning on using worsted weight, so hopefully it won't be too labor intensive. We'll see how it goes. And then I don't have any plans for brioche yet, but I have several patterns that I have in my library or in my favorited that I will definitely try in the new year. So those are the 12 questions that I have compiled for the Knitter's Tag. And I would like to tag Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady podcast and Amber of the Maker's Haven podcast. If you ladies would like to join in on this Knitter's Tag, I would love to hear from you too as well. Okay, so I just wanted to show some new things that I have gotten. These are some presents for my mom that I'm going to be giving her at Thanksgiving. So my mom loves to, well, okay, this is a quilted pillow case that I got from My Creative Frenzy again. I just think it is so beautiful. So here's the back, and I just ordered a pillow insert, of course. My mom loves to change out her bedding on at least a monthly basis, if not every few weeks. So she has lots of different quilts, and she likes to change out her bedding for the different seasons. So I got her this pillow because I thought she would really enjoy adding that to her bed. Or maybe she'll use it around the house too, I don't know. But I just thought she would really appreciate that. And I don't think that there is a repeated square in that pumpkin. All of the squares, I believe, have a different fabric, which I think is so awesome. Her work, again, is just so impeccable. I just so appreciate the work that she does. Lori Springer is her name, the lady behind My Creative Frenzy. So there's the first one, and then I got another one for Christmas. So these are both going to my mom next week. I won't get to see her for Christmas time, so I'm just going to give her these at Thanksgiving. Isn't that so pretty though? I'm so excited to give them to her because, like I said, my mom is a sewist, but she doesn't quilt. She makes dresses and garments, and for dolls especially. She has a doll collection, and she makes tiny, tiny little sewed things most often. But I know that she will really appreciate this. So I'm super excited to give them to her next week. Okay, and the last thing I have to show you is a shawl kit from my shop. So if you've been tuning in to previous episodes, you'll know that I've been showing a set of 3 skeins of yarn from my shop that I think would make a good shawl set. So this week I was inspired by denim. So I thought these 3 colors reminded me of blue jeans or denim. So the cold water, which you've seen a couple of times this podcast, is on this side. This lighter blue is cold water. And you've also seen this one, which is enriched. It's one of my favorite colorways. And the darker blue is deep waters. So I just thought those were kind of neat to go together to make a shawl. And you know, so this would be like the dark denim, and this would be like stone washed. And then this could be like the stitching in the jean material, is what I thought. So I just saw those together, and I thought, oh, that would be fun. That would be fun, and it would go with so many different things in my wardrobe anyway. So these are all, again, on my pitter patter base, but all of my colorways are available on all of my bases. So my husband has finally finished picking all of his corn. So he is a farmer, and he finally finished picking all of the corn yesterday. So exciting to have that done. The goal is always to get that done before Thanksgiving, so the goal has been met. And that means that I get to see a lot more of him, so that's great. And also, we've had a fence of corn around our house all summer, and it's so nice when that gets picked because I just have my view back. I get to see a little bit more. I get a little bit, which is so silly because we're out in the country. We're out in the middle of nowhere. We're like, anyway, we're not surrounded by, we're not in town, but it's kind of funny that I kind of feel claustrophobic when that corn is there because it's like, an 8-foot tall privacy fence for several months out of the year. Every other year, we switch corn and then beans the next year and then go back to corn. So every other year we have this big corn fence all around our house. So I'm so glad that that's out and I can see a little bit more of a view when I look out to the east of our house. Anyway, so that's super nice that that is all done before Thanksgiving comes. I am just so anxious to decorate for Christmas. I am going to do that next week, and I'm so excited. I just love this time of year. Thanksgiving is actually probably my favorite holiday, just because it's so much like Christmas, wherein that you get together with all of your family, but it's not as stressful as Christmas with all of the gift giving. So I really think that Thanksgiving is one of my favorites. I know it's my mom's favorite. So it's so much fun to do all the baking and to spend time with family. So I'm really looking forward to that. I really appreciate you all tuning in to me today. And if you did enjoy this podcast, please give me a thumbs up, and I would really appreciate it if you would like to subscribe to this channel as well. Thank you so much for watching.